I saw a tweet this morning about stimulus and COVID that enraged me, and I want to share it with you, but I need to provide just a little bit of context before we get to that. So you need to understand that there are negotiations going on for a stimulus bill that is far smaller than one that had been being discussed and rejected by Democratic Party leadership right before the election. It's about $908 billion. It includes some things, but it also doesn't include a lot of things. The plan does not renew the federal moratorium on evictions that is set to expire at the end of the year. A second round of stimulus checks, although supported by congressional Democrats and by the president, also isn't included in the bipartisan framework. Democrats push for hazard pay, which would give bonuses to essential workers and healthcare professionals who put their lives in danger during the pandemic, was also excluded from the plan. But that's not all. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley had a great summary of what it doesn't include. It doesn't increase the UI benefits, workplace protections, nope. Paid sick leave, nope. Direct cash payments, nope. National eviction and foreclosure moratoriums, nope. Rental assistance, nope. It does some stuff, sure, but far less than is needed, far less than has been included in past bills that were turned down, whether by Republicans or by Democrats. Now that you know that, you get to see the tweet that I woke up to. Asked, this is from Jeff Stein of the Washington Post, asked why she is on board with an apparently smaller coronavirus package, Speaker Nancy Pelosi cites the game changer of vaccine development and Biden's election. Quote, that's okay now because we have a new president, a president who recognizes we need to depend on science. And it is lucky that I can't project a wave of psionic energy that just destroys the buildings around me, because I want to shatter the earth when I read that insanity. What is that tweet? We don't need much stimulus because there's a vaccine. We don't even have a new president yet. In like 2 months, we'll have a new president who will then be able to begin to spool up some sort of response. She is saying, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's not good now. Who cares? We got a vaccine coming.
So here's what's yes, it's very right. The worst part about it is in the actual video when she's asked that, she tries to say, she gets really mad at a reporter who is like, she's like, what? No, you missed it earlier when I said we have a president with the Biggle Baggle Better plan. She could not say build back better, the Biggle Baggle Better. So the experience I had of this news by watching that video was all you had, plus the utter frustration of her not being able to actually say the words "build back better."
Yeah, look, I didn't see the video. That does sound worse.
From a timeline perspective, too, like it seems like April is when people will actually, as a larger portion of the population, will have access to this vaccine. There are months and months and months till then. And especially in this time when every day already feels like a year. You can do the math. They say like by April, and this was based on probably numbers when it was around 200 and something thousand or getting close to it, that the fatality numbers will double. We have a situation where, according to Yelp numbers as of like 3 weeks ago, 60% of all the closures from restaurants and everything else that's reviewed on Yelp that were temporary have become permanent.
Yeah.
So people need this help, and they need specific kinds of help. And this help will help a little bit, but it's not the kind of help that Ayanna Pressley points out that will actually benefit individuals.
Yeah.
And that's what's ultra frustrating.
Exactly, and we're gonna go through a few different forms of that, but it also, like, if you suspected, whether as a centrist or leftist critic of Pelosi or as a right winger, and they've been saying that COVID was being super politicized, not by the right, of course, they think it was just by the Dems to hurt Trump and all of that in advance of the election. Kind of a little bit of evidence that Nancy Pelosi at least was thinking about it through that lens, and now thinks everything's different because in 2 months we're gonna have Biden. In 2 months, if we're lucky, healthcare workers will have the vaccine and some older Americans will have the vaccine. And you and I won't have the vaccine. And you or I, if we've lost our job, if we've been out of work for months, if we've been evicted, or if there's still an eviction moratorium, but we're approaching the date when all of the rent we couldn't pay will suddenly be due. Because again, it doesn't just poof away. It's just waiting for you and no help is coming. That statement is as out of touch, as tone deaf as possible. But thank God the Democrats just chose her to be their leader in the House for another couple of years. I mean, why not? There was no other alternative. It had to be her. And she's learned a lot, over the course of the pandemic. She's gone from her out of touch ice cream, big refrigerator misstatements to her I gotta get my hair cut and break the rule misstatements to now, what does it matter if there's really no aid? Biden's gonna be president someday and eventually there'll be vaccines. But in the meantime, if I can really fast, in the meantime, let's bring up this chart that shows the percentage of Americans based in different states that are going hungry right now. That's as we enter the winter. Well, they'll also have to pay for increased heating costs and things like that. And also, barring a new stimulus bill or an executive action to extend eviction protections. And by the way, as we said, the one that's being debated right now doesn't have those. More than 6 million households face potential eviction just next month. But you know what? Biden's gonna be president, so how bad could it possibly be?
So can we please go back to that map? And this is something that's so crazy and worth pointing out. The red on maps is typically the hot zone where it's really bad. And things like grays and blues are supposed to be like, this is not so bad. The white light temporary, what seems like a neutral color is 1 in 10 people not having enough to eat.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a mellow number. 1/10 of the American population in Missouri can't eat. 1 in 10 people. Get 10 people in a room, you're still under COVID numbers. You can have that assembly. One of them doesn't eat. And that represents children, like families, not enough food. And that ripples out the more of the infrastructure that ends up employing and transitively feeding America. You're letting it just die. More and more of it dies. In addition to the humans who are actually dying, parts of the economy are being allowed to die because some places are doing what it takes to slow the spread of the virus and the consequences of a virus to a reasonable amount given the circumstances, but they're not giving the people what they need to survive it economically. And that's frustrating. That's worse than frustrating.
Yeah, well, thankfully at least they are considering a 6 month to a year reprieve from COVID-related lawsuits for corporations. So we do have that.
And I'm fine with a negotiation within reason to say, listen, there is a certain amount of risk that is unavoidable, but no one having that in certain situations, but no one having that argument on behalf of the immunity from litigation is doing so in good faith. That's the front. Like, no one. Do you have any faith that like McConnell, when he's like, I gotta hold out for these liability lawsuits, is like, because I do want to keep people clothed and fed, and jobs have to happen. No one. No. He's not saying that. He's saying, I just have these people gave me a bunch of money to keep everything stopped from happening, and I'm not gonna let it happen. And that's it. That's who he represents. He's fine. I think you said it on the TYT. He like took this gamble. Says, how long can I go doing nothing and have no consequences? And he took that risk and it totally paid forward. And then what I was gonna say earlier is Nancy Pelosi's whole framing of this is, okay, we got a new president. And because of that, and Biden himself has endorsed this problem solvers caucus, maybe it's him as the driving force saying, I'm bipartisan guy. Here's a bipartisan group with a bipartisan deal. And he is essentially monolith that group to say this is the future of people making laws in America. That group is Mitt Romney, Mark Warner, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, like that group of people who are the ones who are playing like the most politics in Maine and Utah. Like that is not the center of America. And Collinses are all like, I'm gonna do all these things that are great for companies and not people. And my centrism is over whether I'll be loud while loudly angry while voting to approve certain terrible things on a social basis. But let's just look forward with Pelosi. In the future, you have a new president, sure, but you don't have a new Senate. And you have a weaker majority in the House than you ever had, than you had in 2018. So in what way do you think the future is going to be brighter? Do you think that McConnell is going to suddenly say, well, yeah, now it's time, go ahead and we'll do that $1.8 billion number, which isn't even Pelosi's number. That $1.8 billion or $1 trillion was Trump's highest offer.
Yeah.
And McConnell still hasn't signed off,
being honest.
But what the $900 million is a compromise between Trump's highest offer and zero. It's not a compromise between Pelosi's offer and McConnell's offer. It is a compromise between, it is right there in the middle of Trump's highest offer and zero. That is not, and the last thing is McConnell's only gonna bring that number down because he hasn't signed off on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, some of the numbers that he was throwing around in the past few months were significantly smaller. A quarter of what's being discussed right now would include even less. And I really do wonder, like when she talks about the fact that like the vaccine's coming, and like I've heard other people talk that way. We criticized Geraldo Rivera and others on Fox who say we were gonna have a dark winter, but now we've got the vaccine. And I wonder, like, is it just helpful to be able to pretend that things are gonna be good, but they do understand what the actual timeline for the rollout is gonna be? Or do they actually not know? Do they think, oh no, you're gonna be able to roll into Walgreens next week and get that shot? Like, do they really think that? Or are they just deceiving us? Like implying that the Speaker of the House couldn't know that the timeline like for the roll of the vaccine seems crazy, I guess. But they're really out of touch. And when it comes to technical stuff, they've made massive mistakes before in talking about the internet and everything. I don't know. It sucks either way. I guess it doesn't necessarily fundamentally matter how they're wrong, but they're 100% wrong. And I do wonder why.
Well, here's and this is a question I think really crystallizes it is, dear Nancy Pelosi, since the CARES Act, what's the difference from a results perspective between what you've done and you doing nothing? What's the difference between Nancy Pelosi pushing for a $2 billion stimulus and not getting it, and her doing nothing? Because now it isn't her group that is the problem solvers caucus. That's a Senate group. What's the difference between what she did and nothing? And I can't come up with an answer to that. The only thing, which probably isn't even her idea, is now they're gonna try to put that $900 billion into the omnibus spending bill so that it can pass by a 50-vote majority and that it can have a chance of actually happening because the other side of that blade is shutting down the government. But I don't even know if that's her idea. And is that the kind of stuff they talk about when they say she's a master legislator putting stuff into a spending bill to avoid the filibuster? Everybody knows that.
She, before the election, with a bigger majority, she turned down a bigger bill that she says we need the assistance. Like it would be better to have the bigger bill. Then she loses seats, but overall we win the election. Biden's coming in, the people have rejected the Republicans, and she's asking for less. She's the master strategist and legislator. I guess maybe it's a chapter in The Art of War that I missed. I don't know, but it's weird. And for her to be the leader with that sort of strategy, when like you're coming in with, if mandates exist, you've now got it, and you're asking for half what you were asking for before you got the mandate.
Right. Because
anyway.
I mean, I guess not. It doesn't even make sense because what you just described, Mitch McConnell was never on board with anyway. So her advocating, she didn't even fully advocate for it in any way that affected reality. She wasn't on the brink of letting Trump get a big win by acquiescing to these demands for a COVID stimulus bill ahead of the election. It was never an option. McConnell always dragged his feet. Now all we have is Pelosi's weak. Trump is doing stuff that's way worse from a news coverage perspective in these crazy lawsuits and shutting down democracy. In the meantime, people don't have any money to get by, and Pelosi's the only one we look at going like, "What were you doing?"
Yeah. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.